Devnexus here in Atlanta, Georgia. My name is Paul Anderson.
My name, excuse me, my name is Gail Anderson.
And we are with the Anderson Software Group. And this is our website here. Go ahead. Okay, so who are we? Gail and I are co-founders of a training company, a worldwide training company, and we have courses in a lot of programming languages. We have courses in Java, JavaFX, Python, Golang. We have courses also in Docker and Kubernetes and modern C++. Gail and I are also co-authors of 9 textbooks on software programming, 2 of which you see here. The one on the top is the definitive guide to modern Java clients with JavaFX 17. And Gail and I wrote a chapter on JavaFX fundamentals in this book, and we also contributed to a section on packaging options for JavaFX executables. The book that you see down below is an older book that we did on JavaFX. This is the JavaFX Rich Client Programming on the NetBeans platform. This book was published by Pearson Education, and the one above it was published by Apris. Gail and I are also Java champions, and we are members of the Oracle ACE program. Okay, so a lot of you that went and saw the keynote this morning saw what Sean was doing with JavaFX, and it was pretty cool. It may have gone over a lot of people's heads on what he was doing, but the JavaFX part of it was pretty awesome. And JavaFX has established itself really well on the desktop, right? And although you don't hear too much about JavaFX because it's used internally by a lot of companies on the desktop, it is a very stable platform and a very good alternative to moving away from Java Swing. Now, what Gail and I are going to do today for you is we're going to take Java and JavaFX and we're going to use it on a mobile development for doing mobile apps. And I think you'll find this very interesting because this is not on the desktop, right? But this is going to be apps that are not only in the App Store. One of them is in the App Store, but we have our apps that we run, and we targeted both iOS and Android with the same code base. And you guys won't see one line of Objective-C or Swift code or anything here. It's all done with modern Java and JavaFX. So we'll be talking about that. Now, to get started, you're going to need some help. You're going to need some tools. And Gluon is a company in Belgium that is kind of the stewards of JavaFX. And so they have some very nice tools, Gluon Substrate that we'll be using, and they have some plugins that will help you get started as well. We also need to make executables out of our Java programs to port them to the phone. So we're using the Oracle Graal VM that's going to let us create native executables from our Java programs and our JavaFX libraries. Like I said, there's a really nice plugin from Gluon that will help you get started, and Gail will be showing you that shortly. Now we have 2 demos to show you today. The first one is called Tilt Maze, and it's a game, right? And what we did was we took the accelerometer, which is on the phones, and then you have to tilt it with your hands to go through the maze. And when I was younger, we had a box with balls that moved them around, and then we got the idea, hey, we can do this on the phone, and not only can we show everybody the accelerometer, but we can do it in a device-agnostic way. The second one, demo, and I don't know, how many people play Wordle every day? Okay, well, we saw that, and we said, well, this is cool, right? And we thought for 3 things we could do with this Wordle program. A, we could show people we could teach people how to use Java and JavaFX to do a program like that. The second reason we did it was because, it has nice animations that are going on a little bit that we liked. But the real reason we did it was we wanted to play the game more than once a day, right? Okay, we'll also learn about FXML and Scene Builder for doing your layouts, which is really cool, and we'll show you that. And then along the way, we're going to highlight some JavaFX techniques for you. Things like advanced CSS styling and advanced CSS styling and properties and observable properties and bindings and some other things there as well. And then we'll summarize the session at the end, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, so let's get started. All right, now a critical goal, as you see up here, is to write platform-independent source code where you can write once and install everywhere. And that's been a goal behind Java since day one, and it's certainly the same goal that we want to have when we use the JavaFX libraries. So the design approach that we took was to use the tools from Gluon. Once again, Gluon is a company in Belgium that is the stewards of the JavaFX system and libraries. So we wanted to use the tools from Gluon, and we also wanted to generate our native executables with the GraalVM platform, which is supported by Oracle. And again, this lets you build native images for not only iOS and Android, but you can also build native images for Mac and Windows and Linux as well. These are some of the advantages of using JavaFX. You get a very, very nice UI toolkit, a lot of controls that you can use. You have a scene graph metaphor, which means you have nodes in a scene graph that you can manipulate. So it's very modern looking UI. You have FXML, a markup language that's declarative that will instantiate and configure your UI objects for you. And we'll show you how we can generate that FXML from the Scene Builder tool. And then we also have charts to visualize the data. And you saw a lot of those charts in this morning, when Sean was showing his stuff. We'll also talk about the value of using properties in JavaFX and how to write listeners and how to do property binding and how to write event handlers. And we're going to be doing this all in modern Java too. So we're going to be using streams and lambdas, and so you're going to see a lot of that as well. And remember, the JavaFX is Java APIs, so you get a modern language that you can use. And if you already know Java, it's very, very easy to get up and going in JavaFX to do things like this. Okay, this is something off the Gluon website, and it shows you kind of the pieces that all fit together. In the middle, you see the Gluon substrate tool. That's the kind of thing, the glue that puts it all together. On the left, you see your Java application, and underneath it, you have a build with either Maven or Gradle. We used Maven. On the right-hand side, of the Gluon substrate, you can see that you can run your executables on those different platforms and native images as well. But underneath it is where the GraalVM comes in, and there is an ahead-of-time compiler that's really nice that you can use that will create the native executables for the target platforms that you want to do. And then you can see everything we did here was open source. So we're using the Open JDK and we're using the Open JFX. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Gail now, and she's going to show you our first demo, which was the tilt maze that I described.
Okay, so this is a screenshot of Tilt Maze. You can download it for free. It's on both Google Play if you have an Android and the Apple App Store if you have an iOS. And we decided to pick this demo for a couple of reasons. One is that it accesses the device accelerometer in an animation loop, and that this is like a proof of concept. Can you really create an application that will be accepted by both the stores, and it does things like access the underlying device hardware? And yes, you can, and we do it in a device agnostic way. In this particular example, we use Gluon Mobile, which is a licensed product that's skinned particularly for the mobile environment. And we use FXML to keep the view and controller separate. The game uses collision detection to control the game, and we use property binding to keep it in sync. So I'm going to bring it up in the IDE and run it. Now, I know what you're thinking. No, I do not have an accelerometer on my laptop. But if you're creating a mobile app, you want to be able to do development on your laptop because the edit, compile, run cycle is so much faster than building a native image and then downloading it to your device and testing it that way. So we just did a simple simulation by using mouse input to simulate what an accelerometer would do. So you can see the nice buttons. We have a slider that controls how difficult it is. Now I'm going to run it, and so I'll hit Start Game, and the timer's going down. And so collision detection doesn't let me go past the barriers. And let's see if I can get it to the, no, I lost. Well, it's kind of hard. I say that it's easier to do on that desktop than, so on a phone, the accelerometer is
not easy.
Very sensitive. In fact, to learn about the accelerometer, I just wrote a program to read the accelerometer, and if I just hold it in my hand, it changes a lot. So it's very sensitive. And that's what devices use that do like step counting and Strava that, try and figures out, how far you ran or walked or biked. They all use the accelerometer. Okay, so I'm going to try it one more time just to see if I can get it into the correct hole. Nah. Okay.
We're going to blame it on the angle that she's at, here. So
anyway, okay. So let's go back.
If it was easy, it wouldn't be a game, right? You want to show them the App Store too?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go here to. So here it is for the Google Play. And tells you about the game, and you can do it on either a phone or a tablet. And then in the Apple App Store, it's also there. Look, I have 5-star review.
We'll take it.
Okay.
It's free, by the way.
And at the end of the talk, we're going to put up our website. And if you go to our website, we have all these links that you can download the slide deck. So you have all the links that so you don't have to worry about taking pictures now. Okay, our second game that we want to show you is called Wordish. So it's kind of like Wordle, but it's a little different. So we called it Wordish. So I do play Wordle. I don't think Paul plays it that much, but I do. And as I was playing, I was noticing this would be really fun to do in JavaFX. All this animation of the little tiles and the color coordinated feedback that you get. So just a quick overview, it's just a game. It's on the New York Times. The object is to guess a word. It's a 5-letter word. Whatever you provide as input has to be a real word, and you get 6 chances. And you log in every day, and you play once a day. So Wordish, it's not in the app stores yet. It's not really quite ready for prime time. But it's a great demo, and it's a great way of showing some of the JavaFX features.
And you can play it all day long. Right.
So the code is on GitHub, and the Tilt Maze code is on GitHub too. And we have those at the end. So let's go and see what this one looks like. Okay, so let's run this. And again, this is not the Graal native image version. This is simply your regular JVM hotspot running on the desktop. So we did a couple things. We used, imported the Iconly font library, which is a third-party font library, so we could use material designs for these buttons. Also, the backspace is material design. Let's just play it, and you'll notice, oops, this is my first word.
Go-to word, the first one.
Whoa.
That's a good one.
And my second word is this, no matter what, my first, I was like. Okay, so the green means perfect match, right place, right letter. The yellow color is, it's in the word, but it's in the wrong place, and the dark gray is, it's not in the word at all. Now, when I do demos of this, because my game is different than the New York Times game, the word can be anything that's in the dictionary. And a lot of times it's really obscure words. I don't know what they are. So I cheat. So if you go down to the bottom in the terminal window, you can see what the word is. Azoti.
All right, who knows what that means?
So when I hit return now, so it comes back in 2 steps. One is the reveal. Each tile rotates and tells you what the feedback is. And then this is what I call the happy dance. Now, if you get it on the first try, which I can do by cheating, it says, wow, that's really good. Did you cheat? Because I know. So the other thing is that these letters are, the virtual keyboard is also color-coded, so you get the feedback while you're playing it. Okay, let's go.
Word for nitrogen, by the way.
Oh, is that what it is?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we learned something new today, didn't we? Yeah, Jeopardy. Good for Jeopardy. Good point.
Okay, so let's say right now you're thinking, oh, maybe I want to try doing this. Using JavaFX, create a mobile app. So I put together this page as a resource page for you. So I'm just going to briefly go through some of these links. And the first is that Gluon has a starter page that lets you create pretty much an empty project, but it has the stuff that you need. So let's just go there. Gluon.io, start.io. So notice it's JavaFX 20. And they're really good at keeping everything up to date. And we'll talk about what FXML is, but we're going to choose that. Glisten is their mobile app skinning, and that's what we used with Tilt Maze. We did not use that for Wordish, so it's not required. But with Glisten, if you want, you can also choose Glisten Afterburner, which is a minimalist dependency injection system, and I find it very, it's easy to use and it's very helpful. There's libraries that help you connect to load data. There's a map library. Gluon also offers CloudLink, which is they allow you to connect to their cloud service, and then you can then connect to your enterprise. And by connecting to a middle service first, it helps keep your mobile app separate from your enterprise. So if your enterprise changes, the REST calls differ, you just have to update the middle guy and your apps should still work because you can use remote functions. And we're not showing any of that, but that's just an option. And then finally, the attach, these are all the device kind of stuff that you can, magnometer, orientation, keyboard, battery, and for Tilt Maze, we said, yeah, I want to access the accelerometer. So then it'll generate the dependency necessary to access the accelerometer. Once you do that, you can hit Preview Project and look at it. This is the README file it generates. And this is helpful because it tells you the Maven commands. Okay, thanks. The Maven commands that, see, when I was in the IDE, I said Maven Gluon FX run. And that just does, as it says, JVM hotspot. But then there's the other commands for targeting iOS and Android. And so you can see there's multiple steps that have to happen. And the build is a compile and link, and the packaging pulls in all the native libraries that you need, as well as creating the signatures that you need to put it on your phone. So then install will actually put it on your phone, and then native run will allow you to run it from the desktop, but it's connected to the phone, so any like logging output you can see while it's running. These are the modules that we requested, and now let's just look at the POM file briefly. And you don't have to like absorb this right now, but just to let you know, it creates these dependencies for you and it goes and gets them. So you don't have to like download JavaFX. And it creates the Maven plugin. It's this Gluon FX plugin that helps drive everything. Okay, so let's say we say, yeah, I'm good with that. Then you can click Generate Project. It will download a zip file to your laptop, and then you can open it up. It's a Maven project. You can open it up in your favorite IDE. But that's not everything. So we've been talking about Graal VM, and this is a JDK. It's from Oracle. And this is actually a Gluon specific version of it. It's a community edition. And this has our JDK that we download and we just configure. We say this is JDK home, Graal VM home, and so everything works. So you can see that there's both a Java 11 and Java 17 version. There's versions for Mac, both the M1 chip and the regular Mac. There's Linux, Windows, and for Android, you would download Linux. And there's more steps to it than that, meaning that, let's say I have a Mac, but I want to target Android, so you have a couple choices. You can either go buy a Linux box, you can create a virtual machine and run Linux and do that, which is what I did, or you can use GitHub Actions and they'll spin up an Android machine for you. And I haven't done that because the configuration scared me. But I'm sure, but I know it's been done. Okay, a couple more things. Samples. Now, the Gluon has created this samples, and I would suggest, if you're interested in this, just download all of the samples. Some of them here are real basic hello world type applications. And they don't do a lot, but they prove that all these things can work together. Then some of these other ones, some of these other ones are more involved. 50 states, I know, I think it's push notes. I think it allows multiple people to update a common note database and then also get notifications on their phone when things have changed. So these are a really good way to say, I want to do this kind of maybe more complicated application than what I'm showing you, and they give you samples on how you might want to do that. And finally,
Fuji.
There's somebody here that knows about Fuji in the audience, but I created a 3-part article, and I used Tilt Maze to go through the steps on how I did it. So I explain in a little bit more detail than I can today. So basically in the first part, and I say what I do, I talk about the JavaFX code. How do I use the accelerometer? What's the code look like? How do I do collision detection? What's the code look like? In part 2, I discussed how I created targeted the different both Android and iOS images. What do you need on your Mac? So on a Mac, you have to become a developer advocate. A developer, an Apple developer, $99 a year. You technically don't have to do that. You can do a free one, but they make it really painful. I would suggest becoming an Apple developer. You have to, and you download their tool. What's it called? Their tool to help you generate the right signatures that you'll need to put the application on your phone. In part 3, and then I said before, Android, you need a Linux system. And in part 3, I talk about the steps you need to actually put the application in the App Store. So both app stores have their own little requirements. You have to say like what age this application is appropriate for and things like that. Back to the notes.
Okay. All right. So now let's turn the talk toward Wordish. The other other demo that we have. Okay. So when we got started with this, when you have a mobile app to do, what you want to do is you want to have a plan. And so the plan that we used a really cool tool from Gluon called Scene Builder, and it's a drag and drop utility. So you have components, controls. You can drag them to the palette, and you can design your UI without writing any Java code. And it uses a markup language behind the scenes called FXML. And Scene Builder will actually generate this for you, So you can get your layouts all figured out, and then you can configure, your buttons and your text fields, and you can even write your event handlers. And then what happens is that you don't have to write as much Java code, because if you didn't use this approach, then you'd have to do it all yourself. I mean, you'd have to instantiate the objects, call the setters to configure them, be a lot of work. So your Java code actually decreases when you take this approach. Like I said, Scene Builder generates an FXML markup language for you, drag and drop. You can also use Scene Builder to handle extended controls and customized ones, and you can even load your own font libraries, which we did. And for the layout for Wordish, we used a grid pane for the button controls in the title. We used a tile pane for the letter labels and a flow pane for the virtual keyboard that Gail just saw you. So Gail's going to talk a little bit now about Scene Builder and FXML for our Wordish demo.
Okay, yeah, we're in Wordish. Okay, so we're going to go to wordish.fxml. And let me make this a little bigger.
There we go.
And let's get rid of this. Oh no, I can't get rid of that. Sorry. Okay, so this is so with FXML, you see it kind of looks like XML, but it's a specialized FXML, and it declares what your UI looks like. Now, it would not be very convenient to use this to design your view. It's not helpful. So you can go to Scene Builder, and there's two ways to get there from IntelliJ. So either through this tab here, which brings up Scene Builder in the editor window, or alternatively, which I like to use, you can open this context-sensitive menu and go down to Open in Scene Builder. Now I think it's going to be too small. No, it's kind of small. So let me. Okay. So you can see that it looks a lot like, this is the program that we still had running. Looks a lot like it. And so as Paul was talking, I know this is kind of small, but these are the components then in the hierarchy view. So a scene graph is a regular hierarchical graph. And here is the tree version of it. So at the top, we have a vertical box because we've laid out things it's vertically oriented how we laid out. The top, we have the buttons and the title. In the middle, we have the tiles. And at the bottom, we have the virtual keyboard. So as Paul indicated, this part is a grid pane. It's 2 by 3, and you can configure the spacing, what it looks like. The rewind button here uses the Iconly font, and you can configure it over here under the properties, the detailed version of the properties. So everything you can do, and you can move things around, and that was really useful when we did the tile panes and the flow pane, because I wanted to get it to fit. So the tile pane is convenient for cell sizes. They're the same. The rows are all regular, and the columns all line up, and that's convenient for that. And they're all the same size, and that's what we wanted because I was copying the look of Wordle. Now, one thing that's interesting for JavaFX is that this component, this control is here, it's a label, but it's extended from labels, so it's actually a custom label class. And we added a couple properties to it, and one of the properties we added is something called letter display, and it can take one of 5 values. So if it has the value matching, then boom, it shows up as the matching color, and we're going to show how we did that. Furthermore, let's just show another one, partial matching. We get the same behavior down below in the keyboard, where the keyboard is a key button. It extends button. So it is a button, but we've added another property, and let's do that. So if you were to do this right now yourself with Scene Builder, it wouldn't work because Scene Builder doesn't know about my custom class called letter label, and it doesn't know about my custom class called key button, and it also doesn't know about these cool icons here. But you can tell Scene Builder what they are, and we do that by talking to the jar manager, the library manager. So this, I don't know if you can see, it says wordish.jar. So this is just a jar file of my compiled classes that I want it to use. And we just add it to Scene Builder, but we're using the library manager. And the Iconly font library, we tell it where the repositories are located. So it goes out and gets them, and then I can, boom, use them in Scene Builder. Okay, so now you've got an overview of Scene Builder. We're going to quit it. We're not going to save any changes, and we're going back to the notes.
Okay, now we're all familiar with a Java field and what it is, right? But in JavaFX, we have something more interesting. It's called a property. And a property is a special class that wraps a field, and when a field gets modified, someone who's registered with that property can be notified. So in JavaFX, we use properties rather than fields, and when we design things, we have properties for buttons and text fields and labels and all kinds of things that we want to monitor. And in JavaFX, you have the ability to write your own listener, and there are two types of listeners that you can write, or you can use something called binding. And binding is really cool because it's one line of code in Java that you write that will bind a source property to a target property so that when one property changes, the other property can update. And this is really important in GUI designs because a lot of times when the model property changes, you want something in the UI to change and visually let the user know that something has been modified. And this is really easy and straightforward to do in JavaFX because of this binding mechanism. So binding is more succinct than writing listeners. It's less error prone. It's also great for keeping the model and the view consistent. And then you don't have to write listeners unless you need to. There's also two libraries in JavaFX, the bindings library and the Fluent API. And these have built-in binding expressions that are very easy to use and learn because there are things like less than or and or is equal to. And it makes this fun and easy to write the code, and your chances of having things work right away are very high.
And you can combine them to create complicated or more involved expressions.
Okay, so Gail's going to bring up Wordish right now, and then we're going to show you some of these binding statements that I was just talking about and how cool they are.
Okay, so let's go. Okay, so let's get rid of this and bring up the application. So key letters is a map that contains my virtual keyboard letters. And so I want to create a binding expression to say when I want these keys disabled. And it depends on the game state. So right now, the keys are disabled, so you can't see, but I type in and nothing happens because the keyboard is disabled. The game is not in its state where it's ready to accept it. So let's look at this. For each of these key letter buttons, we create a lambda that is a binding expression. So we bind the disable property of each button to 3 different expressions. The first one is, am I processing the word? And that's just a local Boolean property, not a Boolean, but a Boolean property. That means it's observable that controls what I'm doing in the game. If I'm in the middle of processing the word, I don't want you to go in and start typing. Or is the row filled up? In other words, if you haven't hit enter yet, but you filled it up, you can't put any more keys in there until you hit the delete key or you hit enter and we're going to a new one. Or if the game is over, which is the situation right now, the game is over. So if I start a new game,
go to word.
So I didn't. So I've filled up the row. I can't hit anymore unless I hit return and do another one. Okay, so I think that's binding.
Okay, let's talk about some CSS styling now. We've got some interesting things going on in this app. JavaFX has something called pseudo classes, and what these do is it's actually part of the whole JavaFX control hierarchy. But what we can do is when a button turns less opaque, instead of being brighter, it gets more dim. You can have CSS styling automatically applied if you use these pseudo classes in JavaFX. And in Wordish, what we did was we had a letter label class with its own property for letter display, a key button class, its own property for letter display, and then we had style sheets, a style.css that defined the styling, and then that styling would be applied when a property was updated, and it's all really pretty easy to use. Gail's going to show you how we did that now.
And I just want to say that this exists in JavaFX by default. It's under the hood, but as a normal, I didn't really customize it for an application until I did Wordish. I didn't really need to. It's not something that you always need, but if you do need it, it's really, really cool. So under the hood, if you have a button, for example, and you say, okay, I want to disable it, the code is set disable true. But under the hood, what happens is the button becomes grayed out or less opaque, as Paul said. I don't have code in my application that says make it less opaque. I simply disable it, and the opaque part happens because of the pseudo classes. So we use the same concept. Let's go to controller. Let's see. Okay, so this code is being executed during what I call the reveal process. When you've typed in a word and you've hit return, and it has to go through, see which letters match and which don't, and we do these animations. But during the whole thing, we set, and this letter display, LL is the letter display, and set letter display to the match result. That changes state. And when we change the state at that point, that's when the color changes. So we don't have code in here that says, oh, update the CSS, make it now yellow. We don't do that. We just simply change the state. So there's a couple of support classes that we need. First is the letter label class. Okay, so as I said before, letter label extends label, so it uses inheritance is just the label class. But we added the couple properties. One of them was letter display, so it's a JavaFX property. And JavaFX properties, by default, when you change them, this invalidated method gets invoked for you. And normally you don't need to overwrite it, but if you want to use pseudo classes, you can overwrite it and say, depending on what the new value is, set the pseudo class. So here we're using the new switch statement to set the pseudo class depending on what the result of your word submission was. Then we have this letter style class. Again, so now I'm going to have to do this all the time. Which is a set of enums, but up here, and pseudo class, by the way, is part of the JavaFX, standard JavaFX. We assign these are CSS classes. So depending on what the state is, these classes get assigned. And that's what happens with the button when you disable it. A CSS class gets assigned. And we have a system or a project-wide CSS file. So at the top, we have our root colors defined. And it's nice that the IDE tells us what colors these look like. And so, for example, the match color is this green. And then if we go down to now we're defining the CSS classes that we referenced in letter style. And so this is what changes the color. Now, what does this mean? This means that if you want to change the look of your application, you could change your basic root colors. And instead of using green, yellow, navy, dark gray, you could use red, white, and blue, for example, or something else. So the other thing that CSS, the pseudo classes does is that you don't pollute your JavaFX code with CSS code. I mean, that's really a poor mix of concerns. You can change the look of your application by changing the CSS. And also, it helps isolate the CSS definitions from your code. Okay, we're going to go back to.
Okay, another cool part of JavaFX is the animation library. Okay, now you've got two choices in JavaFX if you want to do animation. You can work with these things called keyframes, which is low level and it lets you control everything on any kind of an animation that you want to do. But they also give you these guys, which are transitions that do all the keyframe manipulation and everything for you under the hood. And these things are really easy to use, and you can use them in a lot of situations where you want your UI to be get somebody's attention, with an animation of some kind. So what are they? Well, we remember we have nodes in a scene graph. That's how JavaFX works. So a translate transition would move a node in the scene graph. A fade transition would change the opacity, make it dimmer or brighter. A rotate transition would rotate a node in 2D space or 3D space. And then if you've got a series of animations that you want to run, okay, you can put them in a sequential transition, and then it'll run one at a time, one after the other. Or you can take that list of animations and you can put them in a parallel transition, and now when you play it, they'll all play at the same time. And this is the part of Wordish that we used to show you how the keys move and everything else.
Or you can take a parallel transition and put it into a sequential transition. So you could have a bunch of things happen at once and then have another set of things happen one after the other. Okay, so let's look at some of that. I'm going to go back to Wordish controller, and we're going to look at okay, so we type in a word, and it's not in our word list. So Wordish says, nah, bad word. So this invokes the method animate bad word. And let me just show you what that looks like. I happen to know that there's a lot of words in there, but this one is. Fritz is not in the word list. So so you can see this animation that's happening. And this is one of the things that says, oh, I can do that with JavaFX. So what's going on is the whole row is going back and forth, just kind of jiggling a little bit as a don't do that. So what does that say? Well, we want a parallel transition because we want to put each tile and to do something to each tile in parallel. So we get all the tiles out and we create a translate transition. That's what Paul had said. That moves the node in the scene graph. It's going to move within 100 milliseconds, take a duration. We're going to say we're going to move it in the X direction, so that's horizontal. 20 is 20 pixels, and positive numbers go to the right, negative numbers goes to the left. So it's going to go to the right. We set auto reverse to true, so it'll go back to its starting point, and the cycle count is 6. So that means it goes back and forth 3 times. And when we define this translate transition here, then we add it to our parallel transition, with basically a list of transitions. And we do that for all 6 of them. Okay, so now you can see it doing that. Okay, so the other transition that we use is, what is this? Whoops. Is the success group. And this what happens when you correctly identify the word. So I can't remember what the word was. Ulima, of course.
Better Google that one too.
So we're going to show you what happens with this. And notice I had to get rid of those other letters couldn't just do a new word. So I'm going to hit return, and this is 2 steps. The first one is the reveal. We're going to talk about that next. And then the second one is the success group, and that's what I call the happy dance. The tiles just kind of go like that. That's the reveal, and then one by one, they kind of just go like that. So the Animix success group is what you just saw, and it's sequential. So we take each tile and we rotate it. Again, it's 100 milliseconds around the z-axis by 60 degrees, auto reverse true, cycle count 4. So it goes like this 2 times. And we add it to the sequential transition list, and then we play. And we set a delay so that it's going to set a delay in between each one, and that's just to give you a little time to absorb your happy dance. Okay, last one is the 245. The label group, and this is the reveal. And this one is way more complicated, so I don't know if so what we do is we actually build, well, let me bring this up. If we were to do this again, what happens is we rotate the tile down, but if we just rotate the tile down, the letters show up as upside down and backwards, and we don't want to do that. So we do this, first we do a parallel transition that both fades the tile, sets it to a blank, and rotates it. And we put that in a parallel transition, and we do that for each one, and then we put each one of those parallel transition into the sequential transition. So that's okay. What's control shift? Wait. Oops. That. There.
Okay, the last thing that we'll talk about is what we did in Wordish was we leveraged the charts that are automatically included in the JavaFX library. And you have pie charts and bar charts and line charts and things like that. And it's all ready to go out of the box. And so what we did in Wordish was we added data to a bar chart, and we customized the bar chart, and we added controls to it as well. And this is a nice way to visualize your data. That was another thing that attracted us to Wordish, or to Wordle rather, was the fact that you could get statistics on the games that you were playing. Although, you know, you can only play the game once a day, but here you can play as much as you want. So let's show you some of the charts and how we set those up, what they look like in our Wordish demo here.
Okay, so that's control. Okay, so I want to show you what it looks like, and first we're gonna, first we're going to finish this game. And I'm genius. And then we're going to go, this icon here, it takes us to the charts page. We've had 3 games. We got 1 in 2 guesses, and we got 2 of them in 3 guesses. And this is a standard JavaFX bar chart, but we've customized it a little bit with the colors, the spacing, and we made it horizontal. So let's go up to... Okay, so that's the declaration, and by switching it, either if it's the regular vertical, the bars go up from the x-axis, and the horizontal, they go sideways from the y-axis. And what determines that is the numbers and string parameters to the generic declaration of bar chart. Then we go to each bar chart has an observable list, which is a series. Now, in our case, this bar chart just has one series, but you could see that in another bar chart, you might want to have multiple series. Let's say you're plotting data of phone sales and different kinds of phones in different years. So each phone would be its own series, and then you can compare them by color to the other ones. Here, we just have one series, and we're getting our data out of our singleton and putting it into the data of the series. So that's basically it. There's, I just wanted to do the stylizing. Yeah, so we changed the look, the default colors of the bar chart using CSS. So we just said, okay, we're using our no match color and white fill and things like that.
Okay, let's summarize what we did for you in our session today. What we did was we showed you that you could do mobile development for iOS and Android targets, all in Java and all with JavaFX. And remember, this solution is not for everybody, right? Because sometimes, the look and feel of an iOS app is not the same as it is on Android, right? And if you want that kind of look and feel, then this approach might not be for you. But if you want to have an app that looks exactly the same on both of these phones, this is a good way to go. And you're all in Java, and you've got JavaFX, and you've got these neat tools that help you do all that. So one code base that we can use and for both platforms. We showed you our Tilt Maze and Wordish apps as our demos, and we also emphasized the fact that the Graal VM played a big part in this because it was creating the native images for us for the iOS and Android targets. You also learned about JavaFX techniques, how to use Scene Builder to generate FXML, how do you do property bindings with observable properties, and you also learned about advanced CSS styling with pseudo classes, and we showed you how easy it is to do some animation in JavaFX, and it's really, really straightforward to do. Okay, thanks for attending. Here's our contact info here, our Twitter handles and our email addresses, and we're welcome you to contact us if you have any questions or anything. This is our website, asgteach.com. Why don't you go there right now, and that way, if you want to download the PDF that we just went through, because the
download slide deck.
The slide deck. That's
right
what
on
you
the
want.
front page.
Right,
there.
and this is our website here for everything. So so if you want to look at the links that we showed you today in the PDF, they're all going to be there. So just go out and get that as well. And then the source code, we all have it up on GitHub.
For both Wordish and Tilt Maze.
Both of the demos.
Actually, we have another game in the App Store. It's called Mini Golf, and that's another story. But it lets you. My son had a big part in writing that when he was unemployed.
Yeah, it was. Our son called us up, and he went to UCLA and he graduated, and he hung out for a while, and then he said, "Mom, Dad, I'm coming home," and we're just going, "Great." But he came home in 2008 when everything crashed. So believe it or not, he had a degree in engineering from UCLA, and he couldn't get a job. I couldn't believe it. But we got a contract to write our first JavaFX book. So I asked Kellen, I said, "Hey, do you want to write some code?" And, "Oh, I don't want to do what Mom and Dad do, but okay." And then he went off and he did Mini Golf, which we did a really good job on it. Not the greatest code I've ever seen, but he got all the math right and everything else, and he had a great time doing it. And then Gail ported it over to modern Java and Java, the APIs, because it was a scripting language at that point. But anyway, we had a lot of fun with that too, and that's also in the app stores too. That's called Mini Golf. Okay, we've got a few minutes left here to take some questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you help me understand where Gluon fits in with this? Because it seems like most of your stuff centered around Gluon, but like when I go to the openjfx.io, there's really not many mentions of Gluon.
Right, because just like they're the stewards in partnership with Oracle. So when a new release comes out, it's their company. It's open source, so other people can contribute too. Oracle contributes, they contribute. They also maintain Scene Builder, and they also have great documentation on their website that shows you like if you have, depending on what IDE you have, how to do the things. So they're the stewards. And
Put up the website too. The website is
Theme Builder is like a Gluon specific thing that they
right.
made.
Yep.
Is that available for other IDEs like VS Code?
yes, yep.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the website is gluonhq.com. So if gluon.com will take you somewhere else. HQ stands for headquarters, I think. Okay. But yeah, these guys are really good, and they've got really good solid tools. And yes, Scene Builder can be used on VS Code and some other IDEs. No problem. Yeah, gluonhq.com.
So JavaFX is open source, and you can get it. You don't need to get a license for it. But Gluon is a company, and they like every other company, they want to make money. So they have add-on products, and I talked a little bit about them: Gluon Cloud Link, Gluon Mobile. So I used Gluon Mobile for Tilt Maze, but for Wordish I did not. Gluon Scene Builder, I showed you that. That's Gluon Scene Builder is free. Gluon Mobile and Gluon Cloud Link need licenses, but the documentation they have is really good too. And they did that Start.io project that's from them as well. And that I found that to be really helpful to get a project that's configured correctly.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, so Android has Android Studio, and I think it's mostly Kotlin, and you can do that. I mean, it's just that with this solution, you have the same code base for both iOS and Android. And under the hood, the Gluon plugin downloads the Android libraries that it needs, but you don't need to have Android Studio installed on your system. Yep.
Yeah, we did the accelerometer. That's why we did that, because
just to show that hey, this is
do that.
This is possible. And there obviously there's a lot of other hardware type or OS type systems that, like the file system or the photos or the phone. There's permissions and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, anything else? Any other questions?
So while you're talking, I got a little Hello World example working, which is pretty cool. But I just used the regular JRE I had laying around my hard drive. We started out talking about GraalVM. It seems that's not a requirement. Is there a particular benefit to using that?
Yeah, there's a, and I tried to say it, but I don't think I made it clear. So when I was running the examples on my desktop, I was using regular hotspot JVM, but you can't do that on the phones. Specifically, iOS does not let you run an application that is a JVM type application because they don't allow that modifying code. But also, I don't think it would work in the Android environment necessarily either. I'm not clear about that. But what Graal brings to the table is it creates the native images. So, and you can use those native images for desktop applications as well. It's not just
for mobile.
Mobile. So, for example, you have a desktop application and you want to make it installable, like instead of like download and go through the native installer, you can do that.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming. Have a great time here, and thanks a lot.